Well, studio, we're pleased to welcome now Noelle Nikpour, Republican political strategist and commentator. Noelle, thanks for joining us.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Well, you bet. So it's like Christmas Eve, right, for us political junkies as we await the big day, Election Day. It's really kind of hard to get your head around the fact that after all the campaigning and all the action that's occurred, that it's finally here. How you feel?
Oh my gosh, you nailed it right on with the preparation. I've been talking about this on television for a year and a half, and I actually can't believe that it's about to come to the final conclusion. Hopefully on Tuesday we're going to know. I mean, there is. I hope to God that we don't have a strung out election where we still don't know. And we have to wake up and figure it out. So.
Yeah, absolutely. So I know you obviously do this for a living, tracking the polls and so forth. We were discussing the latest New York Times Siena poll, and then, of course, looking at the RCP averages, which I tend to rely on more than individual polls. And all you can say is that it's just neck and neck. I mean, there's just nothing you can infer from it.
Yes, and I actually think, obviously I'm a little biased. I'm a Republican, so I look at this by saying that I think that this is good for Republicans because in some of these states, really, Kamala Harris should be, she should have a little bit more of a lead, and she doesn't. I'm looking at Wisconsin, I'm looking at Ohio, I'm looking at Michigan. Being neck and neck and being this close with her rallying around and all the star power, and they have raised more money nationally than the Republicans have. Really, she should be sitting a little better. So it really tips it to me as a Republican strategist and somebody that raises money on a national level. It really signals to me that they should be a little bit more worried, and we have a little bit more reason to smile.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. And we were talking earlier that Mr. Trump is polling better at this point in the election on the national polling than he did in the prior two. Do you think that that's instructive, Noelle, with respect to the outcome in the 6 or 7 battleground states?
Yes, I do. And another thing, when you look at a lot of these polls, you'll see two resonating subjects that are glaring. And that's number one, the economy, and that's number two, immigration. And I think what it comes down to are a lot of Americans, they have to sit and they think, do I feel safe? Mm-hmm. Do I feel economically sound? And the answer usually, unless you're part of the 1%, usually the answer is no. And I think that the burden that the Harris ticket has to unpack here is the fact that she's not just some new candidate that was nominated and they love her. She was placed there because the money transfer only could go to her. From Joe Biden. Yeah. And Joe Biden basically had to step down. So she was actually just placed there. She wasn't nominated. And all the things that Americans are upset about are under her watch. So the burden is her to unpack it by saying, we're going to do better. Well, you should have done better, and you should be running on a Joe Biden Kamala Harris ticket that you've done better, and they're not. So really, that's to Trump's advantage because there are two things that the Republican platform shines on, and that is anything dealing with the economy. I mean, we are major capitalists. We are business friendly. It's a great environment. We are less regulation and low taxes, which people can thrive in that. So Republicans notoriously are better from an economic standpoint. And then with immigration, border, and safety, plus with global unrest, we've got Ukraine and Russia. We've got Taiwan that's nervous. We've got, the Israel deal. We've got campus breakouts all over the place with, students that are Jewish feeling unsafe. Yeah. So there's a lot of things at play that Kamala Harris really can't say that she's going to do better because she didn't.
Rarely touts accomplishments over the last 3 3/4 years. I was just saying she rarely touts accomplishments of the Biden-Harris administration. She doesn't even talk about those. I'm not sure there's anything to mention, but it seems like that's a detriment.
Well, George, she really can't. And I think that it would put her in a strange position to tout anything because, I'll reiterate the fact that the economy and immigration and she was over the border. So that's even worse that she was over that particular, fraction and she didn't do anything with it. The other thing is, as far as being out of touch and connecting, I think Trump connects with the working man, which is really odd because the Democratic Party is supposed to be the one for the working man and the everyday man, but somehow because of Trump, they have identified with this billionaire as somebody that's going to stand up and fight for their rights, which is a little unusual. And, I think that the star power, when you've got Beyonce, and you've got Cardi B, and you've got all the glitz and glamour, I think that actually is to their detriment because people might want to come out for, a free concert or something, but that's not going to move the needle when they go home and they still have to open their fridge and look at eggs for, X amount and milk at X amount and thinking about they've got their utility bill, their car insurance bill, and their mortgage or rent, coming due. So I think that the star power actually works against them because Americans in their everyday life really cannot connect to, a Beyonce or, Cardi B telling them, things are going to be okay. It's easy for them to say things are okay. Look at them.
And the billionaire Oprah Winfrey closing it out for Kamala, it's my understanding, reading the reports, in Pennsylvania, where she's spending the day. Mr. Trump's going to hit 3 states. She's going to camp in Pennsylvania, 3 different locations. What do you think that means?
I think that means that they're worried and they're concentrating every effort they can to squeak it out because Pennsylvania, the biggest thing that I see polarizing for her, first of all, if I were a Democrat, if I were a strategist on her team, I would have picked the governor of Pennsylvania. Don't really know why she went out there and picked Walsh, the old coach. I really didn't understand that pick when he really wasn't from a state that you really needed to hone in. So I think that was a mistake, number one, on their playbill. The second thing is they are really, she is not a fan of fracking. So there is a horrible deal, and you've got to look at the state of Pennsylvania and what's important to Pennsylvania because, after all, it's a national race, but as you know, it's a local race.
Yeah.
So those are local issues. Fracking may not mean anything, in a southern state or another state, but it's a big deal in Pennsylvania. And when you come out and you say, I am not for fracking, and then you're running, and 2 months before an election you say, I support fracking, they just don't believe you. So I think she's up against a real hard issue of trying to win over a sector of voters convinced that she's going to flip a switch in 2 months. It looks like pandering.
100,000 jobs in the fracking industry in Pennsylvania. So, Noelle, what do you think about this last-minute poll in Iowa showing Harris up over Trump?
I don't believe it. And I'll tell you why I don't believe it, because let's do a deep dive into what were the questions. I could probably call you and ask you an array of questions, and I could sway it to where your answers were like, well, I don't know. So I could be, oh, okay, so you're saying this and that and this and that. We're not really privy. We don't see what's behind the curtain or how the sausage is made with a lot of these polls. We also, don't know the details on who they got. But depending on, the sampling, there's a lot of factors in here. But to answer your question, I don't believe that Iowa is going for Kamala Harris. I just really don't. That seems so out there, and it seems like kind of a bit to grab the news, like clickbait. I think that is insane. I saw they were talking about it on a couple of channels.
Yeah.
I switched back and forth from Fox, MSNBC, CNN, Bloomberg, and I saw they had a roundtable on it, and 3 of the Republican strategists were basically saying the same thing as I am. They really don't believe it.
I agree. We're up against a break. Noelle, can you hang with us for one more short segment? I want to talk to you about the down ballot races.
Absolutely.
We got Noelle Nikpour. She's a Republican political strategist and commentator. We're in the Element Wealth studio. Coming right up. Noelle Nikpour, commentator, Republican political strategist, is our guest. We're analyzing, of course, the big election. So, Noelle, I'm feeling pretty good about flipping the Senate, at least 2 seats. West Virginia, I think, looks good for the Republicans. And, man, oh, man, if we can send John Tester to the House in Montana, that would be awesome. But Pennsylvania and Ohio, Wisconsin, Michigan, certainly all in play.
Oh, yeah. And you know what? I've got friends out and donors out in Montana, and it's looking really good for Montana. So it's about time to get that guy out of there, and I'm really happy about that one. So I feel pretty good about that. Also, I did work a couple of years ago when Bernie Moreno out in Ohio was running in a primary, and then he dropped. It was a real promising, good candidate. I really enjoyed doing consulting work for him. And, you know, this time around, I am hearing from some of the people on the ground there that it's looking very favorable for him. And a lot of that has to do with, you know, he's a good candidate, very well-liked. But the other fact is Sherrod Brown, you know, he got kind of caught in this, you know, the Free Palestine kind of movement, where there were a lot of his Jewish donors that were upset that the party nationally seemed like that they weren't doing enough to protect Israeli students and, you know, Israeli or, you know, Jewish students and Jewish, you know. So he has really been suffering a lot from that main issue right there. I really feel we can pull Ohio off. And if you've looked at some of the polls, it's toss-up, and it really shouldn't have been with that incumbent who's been fairly popular.
Yeah.
So I'm looking for Ohio. I'm also looking, I actually think that Pennsylvania could come our way too. I feel like that we are going to flip the Senate, and I have been focused. I worked on a PAC recently focused on raising money because I was like, while everybody else is looking at the Harris-Trump, I want to make sure that we are going to be protected against bad policy in case something happened. I wanted to hedge my bet, and I put all hands on deck for protecting the U.S. Senate.
Dave McCormick in Pennsylvania is a high-quality candidate, a business person, Bridgewater Associates. Bob Casey, we need to send him the same place that John Tester's going, which is to the House. He's just a nasty senator, honestly.
You've got that right. I mean, I know we're on a radio show, but there are some lovely things that I would like to say. I mean, that we all as consultants in a back room are just like, oh my gosh, just, you know, we've got to change the direction of our country, and everybody feels it. I mean, we're one step away from going down a rabbit hole, and it's people like this, and the power, as you know, Gerard, the power is in the U.S. Senate.
No doubt.
It's a very powerful position. So although presidential is very glitzy and, you know, the media focuses on it, really it's the Senate seats that wield more power than we know.
Noelle, $440 million in Ohio for a Senate race, $250 in Montana. I figured it out. It's $208 a person in Montana with a 1.2 million population. Have you ever seen anything like this?
No, and actually CNBC did a deal, you know, because they focus on money and markets, and they had $1 billion counting super PACs, PACs, House, Senate, everything spent within the last 7 days.
Last week, yeah. $1 billion.
Yeah. What in the holy heck? I mean, this is, it's kind of a love-hate with me because I got a full disclosure. I raise money for SuperTalk.
Sure, right.
And I work off commission, so I'm like, it's raining money. So this is it's enjoyable for me. But on the flip side, gosh, what if we put money like that to, help find a cure for a disease or help, people that need help or are veterans or, this is a lot of money, but this should show you with $1 billion spend 7 days out, this should show you the passion and people that are whipped into a frenzy. And also remember that this is also counting every dollar, meaning the small dollar donor, which equates into momentum. These people that give $5 that are broke, they're giving $5.
Yeah.
They're going to come out and stand in the rain or whatever on Election Day, and they're going to vote.
We're up against a break. We appreciate you joining us, Noelle. I'll just leave you with this parting thought. We'll have to cover this if we can get you back on after the election. This signals to me we've vested too much power in political office.
Yep. You're right on that, and that's a good close, and I can't wait to see you after this election.
It's going to be awesome. Noelle, thank you so much for coming on. It's been an honor. It's been a pleasure. Appreciate all you do. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
We're coming right back, folks, after Fox News and SuperTalk News. Stay with us.